increased demand from the growing population is directing the focus of investors to Africa, a hot topic here at the NZZ Capital Market Forum. And joining us now is Aly-Khan Satchu, CEO of East African financial portal Rich Group. Aly-Khan, much of Africa has got poorer in recent decades as a result of war and weak governments and crippling debt. Is it really safe to invest there and worth exploring?
So I think we've seen an inflection point in sub-Saharan Africa in the last 10 years. I think China was responsible for a lot of that inflection point. Debt to GDP ratios are typically way below the Maastricht criteria. So actually, in fact, a lot of these countries are under-leveraged on their balance sheets. I think we're seeing a significant improvement and actually a breakout moment for the African continent. So that story is the rear-view mirror. I think, if you look ahead, it's quite different from my perspective.
So what do you think the future holds then?
I'm very bullish about Africa. I think Africa is converging with the 21st century. I think we've seen tremendous strides being made. I know it's a lot of it is a commodity story. It's what the resources that can be extracted out of the ground, oil and gas, all those kinds of things. But also it's about the unleashing of the human capital. We've got lots of young people on the continent. The mobile phone was a silver bullet for them to participate in the world as we know it today. And I think one has to take all those into the mix. Today we have more middle-class Africans than there are middle-class Indians. So if you want to see a tipping point, you probably see it in that data as well.
And you mentioned the telecommunication area. Where are some of the other big investment opportunities?
So, telecoms obviously has been breathtaking. It's been a huge phenomenon. We've got 650 million mobile phone subscribers. Mobile money has been very, very sexy and exciting. But also, the extractive industries, digging things out of the ground is very big. On the East African side, we've found huge oil and gas reserves. So everyone has previously looked at West Africa, but that's happening. We've got lots of new mineral extractions, mineral sands, gold, copper. We have a lot of the world's deposits, and I think for a long time it was too far away for people to imagine. And in fact, China took the lead in this respect. They went into these difficult to get to places and started extracting, and I think now you're seeing more and more people following in their footsteps.
So what kind of investment do the economies within the continent actually need to get off the ground?
So the first investment, it's not really rocket science. It's quite simple things. It's building roads, connecting cities, infrastructure. And we've seen a lot of that happen. In Kenya, there's been the Thika Superhighway. Wherever you go across the continent, you're seeing that happen. Some people are further along the curve than others. So the first point of investment is the simple thing, bricks and mortar, building roads, doing the simple things we did 100 years ago, railways, those sorts of things. And they're producing tremendous returns. Energy, for example, somewhere like Kenya, geothermal energy is huge, the potential is big. So it's about unlocking these very simple things. It's not really complex, it's actually quite simple.
And we have already seen a heightened interest from investors, and you did say that some of them are producing good returns. Are these investors all seeing good returns?
So I think, there are differences in returns, but this year we've had some good returns in the stock markets. Egypt, admittedly off a very low base, is the second best performing stock market in the world. Nairobi's third. South Africa's at an all-time high. Succession of them this year. So you're seeing these markets begin to perform. There's been volatility before. People have had their fingers burnt. But on average, we've hit a sweet spot this year. And I expect that sweet spot to continue for a little while, actually.
But what about all of the political risks?
Political risk is multi-dimensional. So first of all, I would say, typically African political risk has been very high. Last year we saw Cote d'Ivoire. We've got the transition in Ethiopia happening right now. We've got the southern Sudan problem with Sudan. So it exists. Let's not be naive about it. But I think if you look at the broad trend's improving. The problem with Africa is, you can see a big improvement and then you can see a sudden breakdown. So that exists. But overall, we've got young people who are connected, who want the same thing that you and I want. And it's their ability now to articulate what they want to their politicians, and now they're beginning to see these politicians react to it. So I think that's where I'm fairly optimistic, but I'm not naive about it.
So how can investors then, with this appetite for volatility, actually get their money into the economies?
So, I would say that the problem is going to be that potentially with another round of quantitative easing, with all these countries like Switzerland not wanting any more cash, that actually the cash might well go towards Africa. And I think, obviously, the risk is we get too much liquidity coming into what are essentially very thin markets. But I think overall, if you look forward and you sit in 24 months, 3 years, 5 years, I would look at listed markets. There have been tremendous growth stories, things like Diageo's EABL, the brewing companies, the telecoms companies. You know, you don't have to go right down the food chain. You can just do the simple things and they will produce some very strong returns.
Thanks very much, Aly-Khan.
Thank you.